Hi everybody, Maggi is one of the most iconic brands in the Indian business history. And for our generation, it's even more special because it has been an integral part of our childhood. But from the business standpoint, the most fascinating thing about Maggi is that way back in 1983, both Maggi and instant noodles were completely alien to the Indian culture. And yet, Nestle single-handedly created a 937 crore market and has been a market leader in the domain for 38 years. And in spite of giant rivals like ITC, Marico and Unilever, even today, Maggi has a whooping 60% market share in the instant noodle segment. The question is, how did Nestle create a market for a seemingly alien dish in India? How did it almost establish a monopoly in the instant noodles market? And what are the lessons that we need to learn from Nestle's genius marketing strategy? This episode is brought to you by Navi Health Insurance, but more on this at the end of the video. This is a story that dates back to 1950s Japan. During that time, the country was still recovering from the downfall of World War II. So noodles was one of the most affordable foods in the market. But because the demand was too high and it took a lot of time to be prepared, it resulted into long lines and long wait times. This is when a curious Japanese man named Momofuku Ando decided to make a type of noodles that could be prepared quickly and cheaply. And after hundreds of iterations, he was finally successful in making a revolutionary product that we all know today as the instant ramen noodles. Now, although his newly invented instant ramen did not debut until 1958, the instant ramen noodles became a game-changing business during the economic boom in Japan. And as the country started developing rapidly, the instant ramen became such a big hit that in spite of costing 6 times more than the conventional noodles, the Japanese still bought instant ramen in large quantities. And soon enough, the instant ramen product started traveling abroad to the US to again become a massive hit. And even today, the parent company of ramen, Nissin, accounts for 50% of the billion-dollar instant noodle market in Japan. And while all of this was happening, Nestle was carefully observing the market and realized that instant noodles is a goldmine product in Japan. But very cleverly, Nestle chose not to pursue the Japanese market in spite of knowing that there was $1 billion worth of market share still left to be capitalized in Japan. The question is, when there was a clear market for a scalable product, that too in a booming economy, why did Nestle not enter the Japanese market? Now there are two seemingly logical reasons for that. Number one, Japan was not so liberal, hence it would have been very difficult to operate as a foreign company in Japan. And secondly, why go on war against a monopoly when you can create your own monopoly, right? Well, that is why Nestle started exploring every other market except Japan to create a market for instant noodles. And one of the biggest markets obviously was India. And that is how, ladies and gentlemen, Nestle entered the Indian market in 1983. And like I said before, both the concept of instant noodles and the Maggi brand was completely alien to us. We were still a closed country with hardly any foreign companies in the market, and the Western influence over us was relatively very less. It's almost like asking our parents to eat lasagna every single day. Then the question is, how did Nestle turn Maggi into such an integral part of our lives? Well, that is because Nestle very clearly understood both its customer and the consumers. To tell you about it, if you look at instant noodles as a product, anyone and everyone could have noodles, right? It really doesn't matter whether it is a school kid or a 40-year-old man. And noodles by default is one of the most generic dishes in the market. So had it been some ordinary brand, they would have tried to capture the entire 740 million Indian customer base. And they would have tried to sell to every single Indian who could have had noodles. And on the outside, it does seem like an obvious choice, right? Well, Nestle was no ordinary brand, and they understood the fundamental marketing principle that if you try to sell to everyone, you will end up selling to no one. So Nestle's marketing team started finding the best niche profiles to see who could be their ideal target audience. And that is when they carefully picked two categories, and those were mothers and children. Now this begs the question, what was the thinking behind this? Now listen to this very carefully. For the adoption of any alien product, it has to meaningfully cater to the pain of the audience and the interest of the audience. Now in case of Nestle, there were two primary stakeholders. There is the customer and there is the consumer. The consumer is the child who eats Maggi and the customer is the mother who buys Maggi. And during 1983, there were two categories of mothers, working mothers and homemakers. Both of them had one major pain, that is to give their child something tasty and healthy when they come back hungry from school. The problem with working parents was that they were not at home, and with homemakers, After running all morning, after sending the kids and husbands to school and work, they needed some time to rest before they could start working again for dinner. On top of that, the child had just eaten chapati bhaji in school, so giving them the same for evening snack would not be good enough. And at the same time, they needed to make something that was less tedious but at the same time was tasty enough for the child to eat. So the two pains over here are working mothers wanted something that the children could make themselves, and homemakers wanted something less tiring to make for their kids. And the interest was obviously a tasty dish for their child to eat. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, Maggi became an opportunist and positioned itself as the perfect solution for mothers as a super easy and a tasty meal alternative for their children. This is how the tagline "Do Minute Mein Maggi" was born. And as we've seen in the commercial, it showcases an act of mother preparing Maggi for the kids only to see them happy and delighted by the taste. Apart from that, Nestle reached out to school kids, sponsored quizzes and events, and even gave them a free hamper of Maggi products. This was followed by a widespread sampling with over 4 million new contacts every year. And as time passed, Nestle even began advertising on TV channels during peak times when people like you and me were watching Power Rangers, Dragon Ball Z and Ninja Hattori. This is how, by positioning itself accurately to cater to the pain and interest of both its consumers and customers, Maggi established itself as an integral part of our lives. Now the question is, if Maggi could establish a name in the market, so could others, right? Because there were already other big guns like ITC, Unilever and Nissin. Then the question is, why couldn't they compete with Maggi? Well, there are three specific reasons for that. Number one, Nestle had evolved its supply chain for 25 long years, which was next to impossible to replicate. And on top of that, it controlled the supply chain end to end. But when Nissin, the parent company of ramen, tried to enter the market, it struggled to find national distribution partners, and its alliances with both Hindustan Unilever and Marico to solve this problem completely failed. Secondly, Nestle had achieved an unmatched level of penetration even in Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities of India. And more people knew the term Maggi than they knew about the actual product, that is instant noodles. So no one really asked for instant noodles, they just asked for a packet of Maggi. This was because since 2005 onwards, the marketers of Nestle conducted exclusive studies and did everything in their capacity to make Maggi accessible to the bottom of the pyramid of India. And in technical terms, based on socio-economic status, the Indian audience could be categorized into 7 categories ranging from A1 to A2. The top segment consisted of SEC classes, as in socio-economic classes of A1, A2 and B1. The middle segment was B2 and C, and the bottom segment was D, E1 and E2. For those who do not understand these terminologies, I'll attach a study material for you in the description. So coming back, the top and middle segment was already captured by 2005 through Maggi's conventional marketing efforts. And they saw that the real opportunity was in SEC classes C and D that represented over 40% of the market. And after an extensive study, the first product to be launched was Chotu Maggi, which was priced at just 5 rupees and was aimed at penetrating the lower segment of the market. The communication was carefully designed in local vernacular languages, and the distribution system was intricately designed with strategic wholesalers and redistributors to reach up to 2.2 million outlets all across the country. And because of this extensive effort, the household penetration numbers of Maggi shot up from just 45% to 71% for the C class and from 31% to 62% for SEC classes D and E in just 4 years from 2006 to 2010. This is the reason why when ITC and Unilever entered the market, they found it very difficult to achieve this level of penetration and brand recall value. And lastly, it was the impeccable connect that Maggi had established with its customers. And this is something that does not need any explanation, but a classic demonstration of the same was seen in 2015 when this happened to Maggi.
दिल्ली सरकार ने 15 दिन के लिए मैगी पर बैन लगाने का फैसला किया है। शायद ही कोई घर ऐसा हो जहां मैगी न बनती।
भरोसा टूट रहा है तो गुस्सा सड़क तक दिखाई दे रहा है। जांच में मैगी के सैंपल में MSG यानी मोनोसोडियम ग्लूटामेट और लेड की मात्रा तय मानकों से ज्यादा निकली।
जब मामला सेहत का आया तो लोग जायका भूल गए। 2 मिनट में बनने वाली मैगी के खिलाफ देश भर में लोगों का गुस्सा उबलने लगा।
आज के बाद हम लोग मैगी नहीं खाएंगे।
As soon as this ban happened, Maggi disappeared from the stores for 5 long months, and their market share nosedived from 75% to 0% within no time. But you know what, guys? As soon as Maggi came back, they came out with something called We Miss You Too campaign, wherein the brand asked fans to share their stories about how much they missed Maggi on social media. Now you see, this is not some Michael Jordan's Nike product or a revolutionary iPhone that we're talking about. It is just an instant noodle brand expecting fans to share their memories. But as we all saw, it turned out to be one of the most successful campaigns Nestle had ever executed. And fans from all across the country started pouring their love for Maggi. In fact, Snapdeal sold out a whooping 60,000 Maggi welcome kits within 5 minutes of the Maggi flash sale. And hashtags such as Dil Ki Deal with Maggi started trending on Twitter after the sale resumed. This was the extraordinary level of connection that Maggi had established with its audience. And not so surprisingly, it was very difficult for Unilever or Nissin to achieve this level of connection with a player like Maggi in the market. And guess what? By 2017, Maggi was back to the #1 spot in the market with a whooping 60% market share in the instant noodles market. This is the iconic story of the Maggi brand. Now this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that are the lessons from Maggi's genius marketing strategy. Meanwhile, people, I don't know if Maggi is dangerous for you or not, but not having health insurance is definitely dangerous. The most dreadful part of an insurance is the claim processing, which only gets worse after we meet with an unfortunate accident. That's where Navi Health Insurance comes in. And their vision is to turn the entire claim process into a seamless experience so that you can focus on healing and not keep stressing over your insurance claim. This is the reason why Navi provides 100% cashless claims in less than 20 minutes, which means you do not have to go through the hassle of claim reimbursement process. You'll be assigned a personalized claim relationship manager who will act as a single point of contact between you and your insurer. And the CRM assists the customers throughout the claim process, making it fast, easy and hassle-free. Navi Health Insurance has a network of 10,000 plus hospitals and a monthly health insurance premium starting at just 241 rupees. You will also get unlimited automatic sum insured refill and free doctor consultations. The best part is that everything is seamless, digital and paperless. So if you want to have a pain-free experience while claiming your insurance, please go ahead and sign up at the Navi Health app in less than 2 minutes using the link in the description. Moving on, there are 4 lessons that we need to learn from Nestle's incredible business strategy. Lesson number 1, always remember, while most brands spend time and resources to find out how to penetrate a market, only a few brands spend time and money to find out which market to penetrate. And some of the most revolutionary products in the market are more often than not the products that have created a market for themselves. And it's not just Nestle. Even Apple never tried to compete with Rolex to make mechanical watches. They instead created a market for smart watches, and now they're way ahead of any other watch company in the world. Similarly, Henry Ford had the option to compete with luxury cars, but he instead created a market for the bottom of the pyramid. And in our case, Maggi created a market for instant noodles in India instead of going head-on with Nissin in Japan. Lesson number 2. If you're selling a generic product, your first instinct would be to sell to every single person in the market. But always remember, if you try to sell to everyone, you will end up selling to no one. So always try to find a specific target audience to sell your generic product. And drop a comment about if you know any other brand that sells a generic product to a specific audience. And for the people who have done the communication masterclass, you already know which brand I'm talking about. Lesson number 3. The golden recipe to market penetration lies in identifying the pain and interest of the audience. And your accuracy with spotting this pain and interest is directly proportional to the ease of adoption of your product. In this case, it was Nestle's intricate understanding of the mother's pain of being too tired to make an evening meal for the children. And the interest was so beautifully captured through Nestle's initiatives to interact with children by the means of cartoon channels and school competitions. And lastly, like I've said many times before, while good brands sell you a product, great brands sell you an emotion. And even if you're selling something as simple as a dry cake of noodles, if you connect with the audience at an emotional level, you will stand out from the rest of the crowd. Like a legend once said, people might forget what you said, but they'll never ever forget how you made them feel. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button so that the YouTube algorithm knows that you learned something valuable. And for more such free business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.